Good evening, everyone. The time is 7:15, and a huge welcome to everyone around the world as we celebrate tonight or commemorate tonight the remarkable events of June the 16th, 1976. And we're joined by people all over the country and the world this evening. Peter Crossmaunda, welcome to you.
Hello, how are you, Howard? I hope you had a beautiful day today.
It was full of me trying to relive my youth.
Yes, I remember those days well.
So, Peter, are you old enough to remember June the 16th?
I really am. But we were little. And I know how old you are, Howard. And if you're young enough to know and remember, then so am I. Because we're the same age.
Well, I deny that vehemently, Peter, but seeing you 20-something, it can't be too bad.
No, exactly. We're young at heart.
So, Peter, tell me your memories of the 16th of June, 76.
So my memories, I remember, I was in the same year as Shana Edelstein, who we're going to meet tonight. And so my memories are very much about the fact that we were all in a state of shock that her father had been killed. And we didn't really understand, or I certainly didn't really understand at the time what was going on. And I remember hushed voices when I got home after school and my parents suggesting perhaps they should send the kids to Israel because there was fear of an impending civil war. We were very, protected from what was really happening in this country. And I certainly at that stage did not realize what children my own age were having to live with. I now know a lot more. And what I was going through was nothing compared to what they were living.
Absolutely. We lived in different universes. So, Kafilwe, welcome. Where do you join us from?
Thank you. I'm sorry, I'm in darkness in actual fact right now, but I'm glad that I will be able to do without the lighting. I'm joining you from a small village in Northwest called Madidi.
Okay.
So yes, the other side of Pretoria anyway. We had a bit of a problem during the day. I was worried that, oh my gosh, what am I going to do now? But I'm here now. Yeah, so I'm here. So I don't know whether I will have to keep on my video or can I take it off because of the darkness?
We can see you.
No, we can see you beautifully. We can see you beautifully. We always joke on our webinars that you can have water, electricity, and internet, but you can't have all three at the same time.
Not at all.
And then in the week, someone called me and said, I'm prepared to make do with two, but at the moment, I've only got one. So
absolutely, yeah.
That's right. What we juggle in South Africa. But Dina Diamond, you couldn't have been alive in 1976, surely?
So yes, to absolutely give away my age, actually I was born in 76.
So you're a child of the uprising, Dina?
I am a child of the uprising, as you've seen, Howie, through my own little protests. But
So Kafilwe, what we do until we begin in another 10 minutes time, we just have an informal chat with everyone. We check where they are in the world. We talk about what's happening in their lives. So how is COVID in the Northwest? And then we're going to talk to Lungile.
Yeah, we were actually surprised that now it's been said that the statistics are raising, but Northwest has had a very low statistics in terms of COVID, but we should be very careful right now. Really, it's not as yet that bad, but we hear, from the doctors that things are getting a bit, serious. So it's just a question of really taking care so far.
Yeah, that's what we have to do. So Lungi, turn on your microphone. Let's chat to you. Introduce yourself. Tell us who you are.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lungi Lazapi, and I am the director at Morris Isaacson Center for Music.
Fantastic. So,
Yeah.
And Howard, she helped us so much in getting in touch with students from Morris Isaacson. So thank you so much, Lungile. You've been amazing.
You're welcome.
So Lungi, must be about a year and a half ago, we brought Benjamin Zander to the music school. And,
of course.
And we're going to be showing tonight a video of Zander's visit to South Africa and that beautiful piece that he conducted at the Morris Isaacson School.
Yeah, it was actually quite an amazing experience. I was still new. I just recently joined the organization. So yeah, it was an amazing experience for me to be part of that program.
And as we were driving away, Benjamin Zander's daughter, Zander had conducted and said, like, I don't know that piece of music. And his daughter said, of course you do. It's the De Beers Diamond advert.
Yeah.
and that's how it was named. Janet Doblin.
Hi, hello.
Welcome.
Hi.
How's it?
Howard.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
Hello.
Hi. Hi, Peter.
Are you joining us from Joburg, I presume?
From Joburg, yes.
Judging by the warm clothing, we can.
Choices are limited.
I'm just reminding my sister. I hope she doesn't. Peter knows my sister very well.
I hope she doesn't forget. But
No, she knows about.
Get nervous.
We were chatting earlier on WhatsApp.
Oh, good. Okay. No, she will never forget. But Shana has kind of stayed in the in the background of any interviews in the past. But I'm so happy that she's doing this. It's good.
Me too.
I mean, today must be an enormously difficult day for you, generally.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely. We went this morning to my mom to sit with my mom and just talk. So yeah, it is. It's always a difficult day.
And isn't tomorrow Shana's birthday? It must.
Hi, guys.
I mean,
hello, Shana. How's it?
Yes.
She
were
came just in
about
time.
you.
Well, what were we going to? Why has everyone got makeup on?
Janet.
Are we not in lockdown?
No. Look at me. I can tell you why I've got makeup on. Although, Danny Curator, turn on your camera for a second because I've now had a few.
I hate you got makeup. Okay, wait. I know what I need. I'm coming back. Don't move.
Okay, but
Makeup with those glasses. Those glasses say it all.
Gorgeous.
Danny Curator, I don't need makeup because I have been taking this powder that your wife dropped off at me. Tell everyone about the powder that I'm taking.
This magic powder is called Collagene. It's collagen and it does everything. It does wonders for your skin, your hair, your nails, your bones, your sleep, your stress. It's like incredible. You see, Dina takes it, Howard takes it. Everyone should take it. So yeah, it's fantastic and it's kosher.
It's kosher Collagene and so you now rub me and who knows what pops out because I think the kosher genie pops out.
Exactly, 100%. And Howard, I'm happy that I showed you how to actually take it because the way how you were taking it before.
I had blobs floating in my coffee. I didn't know what was happening. I got a little glimpse of Max Dupree a little earlier. And yes. Max, let's turn on your camera. You were very much looking like a seasoned Paul Kruger.
Yeah, and without makeup.
Max, it looks like you're joining us from somewhere fascinating. Yes. What is that behind you?
I live in Simonstown. I'm in my office.
Oh, okay.
What is that behind? Oh, this dude.
Yes.
That dude is King Moshoeshoe of the Basotho.
Oh, wow. And what an amazing hat.
Yeah. It was a picture taken in 1863, only 2 pictures of him taken in Aliwal North. And when he dealt with white people, he put on a top hat and tails. And then he went home and dressed like the rest of his people. But I wrote extensively about him. I wrote a book about him. I made a documentary about him. he's kind of the closest I get to a hero in life.
And Max, those other pieces around you look like collector's items as well. Give us a quick tour of the other paintings we can see behind you.
Then there is a Bram Creer painting. It's a white wolf attacking the freedom of the press. The lady has got a newspaper. And below that, a tiny little thing is my prized possession. It's a guy called Cristo, and he was one of the most prominent Cuban artists. I went to make a film there in 97 or so. And he literally was begging in the street because he had no money. And he sold me the painting of Don Quixote, and he wanted $10 for it. And I gave him everything I had, which was 100. But it's one of my treasured pieces.
Absolutely beautiful. And what does Max du Preez's life look like now?
A lot.
14 hours of work every day, 6 days a week.
Oh, wow.
And living in Simonstown, then I go and dive, looking for octopus. I need a teacher in my life.
Do you teach or get taught?
Yeah. It's lovely to live here. It's urban edge, you know, so we have baboons and we have all kinds of wild animals around us. So
Max,
I'm really loving Simonstown.
Weren't you living more inland in the Western Cape? I thought like McGregor or somewhere like that for a while.
I lived in Riebeek-Kasteel for a while.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Where's your place now?
And I thought that I was developing rural brain. So I came back to the city a few years ago.
Makes sense.
Shauna, just very quickly, in order for us to see those spectacular glasses, which I'm sure you teach everyone at Lasoff to actually wear, let's try just clean your camera a little and get you a little closer to the camera, because we're getting a little bit of flare across it, which probably means that there's a fingerprint across the camera itself.
You can see, I can barely see out of these things. Problem.
So just to everyone watching us, we're going to go live in about 2 minutes time. We're just busy chatting to everyone and welcome everyone in. So Janet, let us meet that man standing behind you. We trust you know who he is.
How's it, everybody?
It's my husband.
Hello.
My 2 children, so they want to be seen, but they're just sitting on the couch for support here.
Well, they can be seen. Tell them to say hello.
So hello, guys. Although my daughter's in her dressing gown, to be honest. Here's my son. Come say hello. This is my son, Brett.
Hello.
How's it, Brett? How you doing?
Guys, all good, all good.
Good. An amazing and I imagine difficult day for your family today, but we send you all lots of love.
Thank you.
My oldest is not here at all. He studies Torah, so that's where he is.
He's Baruch Hasheming somewhere.
He's in Glen Hazel.
Glen Hazel. Omri, welcome. Wonderful that you've joined us this evening. Let's unmute you for a second.
Omri, you're muted.
I'm asking him to unmute.
Oh yes, good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Welcome. Hello, Omri, we're going to go live in about a minute's time. Let's just adjust the camera so we can see more of your face at the present moment.
Is it okay?
Now we're seeing a lot of your chest and only half your head.
There.
Okay, yeah, that's absolutely perfect. Okay, and Dina, I trust you getting hold of Prince because we haven't seen Prince come onto the show yet.
And there's also Paula Modise is still going to be joining us.
Paula is logged on. He hasn't turned on his camera yet, but he's logged on as well. So with that,
good evening, everybody.
Hi, Paula. Let's turn on your camera and let's just check your sound and lighting, and then we're going to go live.
Yeah, this is who I am.
Fantastic. Let's get the camera a little higher. A little higher so we can see your whole head. At the moment, we're cutting your hair. Ah, much better. Fantastic. So with that, we're going to ask all of our guests to turn off their cameras, leaving Dina, myself, and Peter on. We'll come back to you in about 5 minutes' time. And with that, the time has just gone 7 p.m. And tonight, on behalf of the South African Jewish Report, I welcome you to the 99th webinar since lockdown has begun. Dina, what a 99 remarkable episode journey this has been, don't you think?
Listen, absolutely. I think obviously on June 16th, there is nothing else we could have done, and this is exactly where we should be. And it's a remarkable story. It was the start of the evolution of the revolution in South Africa. And I think we've got such an amazing lineup of panelists tonight that truly the stories that will come out, I think, are ones that people have never heard before. And if they haven't, they should have heard them. And I think they really will resonate with people and really make them realize what this day is. It's not just a public holiday. It's not just another day of work, especially during COVID, but it is really a meaningful day and one I think that we're going to really give light to tonight.
Well, I want to ask both Peter and yourself, you've all got teenage kids. And do they actually care on Youth Day? Is this a public holiday for them, or do they actually understand what happened in 1976 and why this day is important and significant for all South Africans? Peter?
So my children are aware of what it means, and we've discussed it, but do they really care? No, not really. It doesn't mean a lot to them. They understand what it is and they understand what happened, but it hasn't really got an impact on their lives, which I feel quite sad behind
it. Yeah, I would agree with that. I'd say my kids are the same. I mean, everyone knows it's great. It's a public holiday. It's another day of school. Yeah. But I think the meaning and the context behind it aren't really fully understood. But also they're growing up in a very different society. They're growing up in an open, democratic society where everyone has rights, where I don't think that the issues that started the 1976 riot really actually resonate with them, and they can relate to it all. And I think even that happens, I think, for the youth across South Africa. I mean, obviously, I think they're ones who, obviously, depending where the family is and where you are in sort of the democracy these days, it does resonate. But I don't think that the youth actually really connect with it as much as they probably should.
But
they don't understand they have the freedoms today because of the youth of 1976.
Yes, and I think that I have a good sense that that's across the board. I don't think it's just, white Jewish kids. I think there are a lot of Black kids, Indian kids, Muslim kids, you name it. I think the youth of today don't really have a sense of this. I'm not sure if Omri, you would agree with me. Is he?
They take it for granted almost. Their freedom is a natural thing they've always had.
Yeah.
But before we go into a broader discussion, there are a few housekeeping things that we do want to do. And first of all, we'd love Britt and Danny to turn on their cameras to wave at everyone. They're on controls this evening. Britt, you'll be monitoring YouTube and Facebook and making sure that questions posted on YouTube and Facebook gets moved across. Danny, you're on controls and showing us all sorts of videos this evening. So a huge thank you to both of you. Really appreciate it. They two are much too young to remember 1976 in person, but we're sure that there are many lessons from 45 years that spill over into their lives today. So guys, thank you so much for joining us this evening. And Peter, the latest edition of the Jewish Report is already up online and will be in bookstores and garage shops and Pick and Pay and Spar and Checkers and Discam and CNA and Exclusive Books tomorrow. Tell us what's on the front cover this week.
So unfortunately, it's all about COVID, because our community and Johannesburg and Gauteng in general has been seriously hit by COVID. And the reality is that there are still a hell of a lot of people who are not taking it seriously. I mean, the numbers are skyrocketing. So we speak to doctors and we speak to people who have been impacted. And that's on our front page, as well as a magnificent photograph taken by Ilan Ossendriver this week, I think, in Soweto. It's really beautiful, really worth seeing. And that photograph is one of a number of photographs we have from top photographers who were asked the question, what photograph has the most meaning for you around youth? And so they gave us one photograph. Each of them gave us one photograph to put in the newspaper and explained why it had such resonance for them. It's really worth seeing, looking at them. And
so also, Peter, if people can't go out and pick up their copy of the Jewish Report newspaper, just a reminder, you can download the entire edition or look at each individual article on www.sajr.co.za. And we trust you're one of our 55,000 readers who regularly read the Jewish Report every single week.
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely. So Peter, interestingly enough as well, on Sunday, we've got an amazing webinar coming up called The Great Jewish Retailers.
Yes.
So what we've gone to 4 amazing retailers, and we've said to them, we want to know and understand the stories of your family from the beginning till today. And who do we have? We have Gareth Ackerman telling us the story of Pick n Pay, his family, the founders of Pick n Pay. We have Simon Sussman telling us the story of Woolworths and how his father started Woolworths in South Africa. We have Philip Krawitz from Cape Union Mart, who will tell us also about his father's business that he took over. And we have Micah Lewis joining us from London. Lewis, of course, runs the Foschini Group, which will be Sportsman's Warehouse and At Home and Foschini's and Markham's, all of those within that amazing brand. And of course, Micah Lewis is married to Kiki Spencer, Princess Diana's niece. And all 4 of them will be joining us on Sunday evening, 7 o'clock, and telling us the stories of their family and building some of the great retail chains in South Africa. Just a reminder to everyone that this is a conversation that involves you as an audience as well. So please, we'd love you to comment in the comment section. We'd love you to ask questions to all their panelists. Let's make this as interactive as possible. So if you're on Zoom, there's a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Please post any question you want into that, and we'll ask all of our panelists to in fact, answer your questions as well. If you're watching us on Facebook or on YouTube as well, put your questions in the comment section, and Britt will move those questions across onto the Zoom panel, and we'll be able to ask your questions to all of our panelists. So that's the housekeeping for this evening. We were discussing earlier the significance of June the 16th and why to so many people, we need to continuously remind them of the sacrifices made by a generation of youth on June the 16th, 1976. In order to get a sense and a background, Danny, I'm going to ask you just to play the trailer that we did for this evening so people can get a sense of what it was like this day 45 years ago.
The law of the country was that we're not allowed to take pictures of anything that the police have done. So I knew I was risking my life. The last picture that I took with this camera is for Hector Peterson, June 16, 1976.
We were so excited. It was like we were going on a school trip.
To them, it was just a joyful march.
The singing, the chanting, we felt free.
Surprisingly, the whole of Soweto came together to march. About 10,000 students.
All of a sudden, there was a shot.
All the police were just shooting at random.
What started as a peaceful protest degenerated into a rampage and later exploded into a bloody conflagration.
So tonight, we relive and retell the story of those fateful days 45 years ago. And with that, I'm going to ask Omri and Pala and Kofilwe to please turn on their cameras, and Lungile as well. And let's start by talking about those fateful days, what they were like, what people experienced, and what they saw on the streets around them. So Kofilwe, welcome. You're joining us from Northwest in darkness, but we can still see you. So a huge welcome to you. Tell us where you were 45 years ago.
Thank you, Howard. I must say that that clip brought back memories. And before I even start, I really want to say to all our comrades, to all the alumni, to all the friends that passed on during that time, may their souls rest in peace. I was at Morris Isaacson High School. Omri, Pala, we are all the alumni of Morris Isaacson High. We were in matric, and the whole plan was that obviously things started, before that, the 16th. We had Tsietsi Mashinene, Mafi Morobe as our leaders. Somewhere, somehow we knew what was going to happen, except that we didn't know how it was going to turn up. So on that particular day, we all went, to assembly. It was already planned that who is going to address us at assembly. We had not brought our books. Maybe some had brought their books who didn't know what was going to happen. So we were informed at that time. Tsietsi took over the assembly, and we knew that this is the day that we are going to show this government that they're not going to play with us. They would have, and remember that for most of us, it was all about saying that this struggle continues right from 1956. Our parents from the 60s, Sharpeville massacre. So it was in our hearts. We knew exactly what they can do to us. We knew that they wanted us to have Afrikaans as a medium of instruction. And people must understand, it was not about Afrikaans as a language. It was about it being a medium of instruction. They had already started at a secondary school in Dube. And it was not for us to say, well, they haven't come to us as yet. We just thought we were going to stop it before it actually happens. So that particular day was a normal June cold day. And as we assembled there and singing, obviously, Senzenina was the basic song, and holding hands together as young people, and in a way, in a carefree way, though we knew exactly where we were going, following what our leaders had told us, that this is going to be a march, and making sure that those who are still young, who are not supposed to be part of the march, shouldn't be part of the march. And if you know where Morris Isaacson is almost towards the south and closer to Naledi. So there's a big main road, that runs across CWJ and White City, Mufolo to Dube, marching, closing the streets, with our uniform, our fists raised high, basically not knowing what was waiting for us down the road. So maybe let me just not go further and just give my other colleagues to my alma mater also to continue. But yes.
Can I just ask you? So you were in matric. So this was your matric year.
That was my matric year. Yes.
Yeah. And did you actually manage to go on the march, or did they did you have to stay behind? What happened?
We were on the march. It was our matric year, and I mean, at that time you already had plans that this is what you want to study further. But how do you continue? You know, when you've got a government that actually wants to, because we're fighting more for those who are going to remain behind. You know, it was not a question of saying, well, we are in matric, you know, we are moving on, so they will have to deal with the situation themselves. So I was in my matric year, and the march at that stage, Omri, Pala, please, you'll correct me, was that it should be matriculants as well as those who were in Form 4, that is grade 11. We were not planning to have young people. That's why the issue of Hector Peterson was so hurting, because he was not supposed to be in that march. We're taking responsibility, you know, that it will only be those who are in matric as well as those who are in Form 4. So yes, I was in matric at that stage. And I must say that, you know, I was 20 years of age, by the way, and not because one had dropped off during the schooling, but because some of us, the issues had started earlier on. I only started schooling at the age of 8 because, you know, my father was already in Botswana and we're moving from one place to the next, and until you started your schooling, you know, you were 8 years already. So I was 20 years of age at that stage.
So Omri, tell us about that day.
So Omri was also in matric with you. Yes. So
yes, Omri was actually in matric with me. Yes, Machine was in matric. Yes, Pala was younger at that stage, but he was in Form 4 at Morris. Yes.
So Omri, tell us about that day.
Yes, that's briefly. You know, the day has got a background. Of course, the background maybe we will not discuss today. That South African Students Movement, which is SASM, actually convened the meeting that planned the June 16 and formed a committee that was called Action Committee. And that Action Committee is the one that was later to become Soweto Representative Council. The first meeting was convened by Tebelo Mtapanyan, who was the Secretary General of SASM that time, and attended by Zweli Sesane, Sbongile Mkabela, Mafimu Rube, Tsietsi Mashinin. And it is in that meeting on the 13th where they decided to elect Tsietsi Mashinin to be the leader of the march on June 16. So on the day of June 16, of course, we were privileged that we had Tsietsi Mashinin and Mafimu Rube in our class. So they used to give us first-hand information of the development of how things will work out, what must be done. So we were mostly well informed about developments. So we knew that we had to prepare placards for the 16th of June. And the placards will be about Afrikaans and of course also about apartheid. But the issue of Afrikaans, of course, as a medium of instruction is the one that initiated, that ignited what happened. Because what happened is that when the Nationalist Party introduced Afrikaans as a medium of instruction in junior secondary schools, we became aware that from junior secondary schools it's going to come to high schools. So the teachers, of course, Mr. Matawat, of course, was also influential in influencing the student that, you know, be aware that whatever happens at junior secondary school ultimately will come to the high schools. So we became aware that if we don't do anything about it, it means in the next 2-3 years, all the high schools in South Africa will be taught in a medium of Afrikaans. And in our mind, Afrikaans, of course, was not an international language. At that time, we were aware that it's only spoken in two countries, South Africa and Namibia. And so it was not a an international language. So it was not going to give us more benefit to do every subject in Afrikaans. And this is why, for us, it was important to protest against Afrikaans as a medium of instruction. But on the day itself, on the 16th June, as Kifilo had said, we were addressed in the morning by T.T. Mashinini. We had already prepared placards, most of us, and the march was supposed to be high school and secondary schools, no primary schools. No primary schools were supposed to take part in the march, and but they took part by default. But the march was for high schools and secondary schools. So all the 7 high schools in Soweto, they were supposed to organize the secondary schools nearby, to march with them. With us, of course, a secondary school nearby to Morris Isaacson, and Naledi High secondary schools nearby to them, Skanondwani secondary schools nearby to them. So that's how the march was planned, that it would be high schools leading the march, followed by the secondary schools, but the primary schools were excluded.
Omri, can I ask you just to describe that morning as you got to school? What happened when you got to school from until you were out there, and just describe the actual events of the day, if you could.
Yes, on the day, I would say that, the day was hyped up emotionally because we were aware that we were going to march, and we never really knew what a march is. Up to that time, I had not been involved in any march, any demonstration of any sort. So it was going to be the first time. So we had anxiety as to what a march is going to look like. How is it going to be like? So when we arrived at school, of course, we had our placards. I didn't really have any placard myself, but my friends had placards. And then from the assembly when we used to do normal Lord's Prayer and sing a hymn and Lord's Prayer, from there, then on that day, T.T. took over after the Lord's Prayer and so on, and then started, issuing out instructions of what's going to happen, how are we going to move on. We're going towards Orlando West, and with a plan to go to Orlando Stadium, so, and we will be marching that way. So giving those instructions, and then all of a sudden, in the assembly, students started, raising placards, started singing. The mood was hyped, and so I would say that the mood was hyped. And of course, we didn't know what a demonstration is. We have never experienced it before. So I would say briefly, this is how I would describe that moment.
So Paulo, talk to us about going onto the streets. What happened when you were in the streets?
Yeah, in the streets, of course.
Let's Paulo just answer that.
Yes.
Yeah, obviously context is always important, as Omri alluded to that. So Orlando West Junior, not Orlando West High, was a school behind Orlando West. Yes, don't throw away from the old Mandela House. That's where Seth Mazibuko was. So that school and the school where Zweli was at a school which is now named after Makubu, where around April, May had already started as junior secondary boycotting Afrikaans as a medium of instruction in their schools. So the meetings that Omri alluded to were meeting that was saying us as high schools, we need to be able to support the junior secondaries. I was a client behind both of them. I was 17, and TH's logic and persuasion was along the lines that Omri said, that we can't assume that because in our case, as Morris Isaacson, there was no 50-50 split in content subject of Afrikaans and English. Assume that all is well. We are not affected, so we can't do it in solidarity with our little brothers and sisters in the junior secondaries. So
sorry, Pala, the camera.
I'm going there.
Sorry, the camera's just slipped. We can't really see your face. Okay, that's much better. But let's talk about what happened on the streets. Let's talk about once you were out there, out of the yards of Morris Isaacson, what happened?
Yeah, just behind Morris Isaacson, from 1973 to 1975, the lowest classes of Morris Isaacson were cut off. My class was the last Form 1, the last Form 2, the last Form 3, and the last Form 4. So 76, the classes that were used by the Form 1s, Form 2 in our school were now part of a new school called Lebone. So we just jumped over from our school to that school to bring them together. They were a second junior secondary school. Lebone means lightning. From there, we went to the next secondary, which was Tisili, where Hector Peterson's sister, it's important to indulge you on that, Howard, so you understand why Hector ends up being a 11-year-old primary ending up in this match. His sister Antoinette was at the next school, which is Tisili. We are jubilant, we are singing the songs. Some of us, they are new songs to us, liberation songs. We are excited, fist pumps, the mood is buoyant. We arrive at Tisili. The principal there, Mr. Rajweli, doesn't like what he sees. He tries to run to phone the police. We jump on top of one another. One guy cut off the telephone lines to the police. So Hector's sister, and she was interviewed, I saw her today in one of the thinking the younger brother is at Mulaita, which is almost opposite to Sele Secondary. She can't give him the key to go back home because the parents are at work. So she takes him along because not any of us anticipated that we will end up in the mayhem that we ended up in.
So Omri, let's go back to, I'm still struggling to understand what it was like on the streets. Let's tell us, you leave the school, you're on the streets, describe the scene to us.
So as you went from school to school, there were more and more people gathering, is that correct? So there were more and more people and there was a hype.
Kafil, so sorry, adding something. Kafil, I think you're on mute.
They are junior.
Okay, Pala, just hold on 1 second. We got Omri and Kafil, we're next.
Okay.
Yes, I think
as we are walking down the road, and that's what I'm saying, sometimes, you know, when you talk, it's, if you could visualize that road that runs through and visualize that road, main road, where taxis should be driving, buses should be driving, cars should be driving, and that road is taken over by the students singing. You know, that road that comes all, okay, I'll start from Morris Isaacson, but obviously there's students from Naledi who would have walked longer than us, and we are walking and we are singing and we are holding hands, and there's laughter, by the way, and we swing with that road. Taxis have nowhere to drive. We swing through Mufulo, and we swing through Dube, and you know, we along the road, you can see the houses, people are watching, and people are wondering what is going on today, and people are hanging on their fences and watching these students and wondering, and shops, you know, we now, as I speak now, I visualize us passing through Dube, there was Duba shops there, and you know, I don't know whether the robots were working on that particular day or not, but we're just going through and we're singing. So it was like students coming from the left to the, you know, the back and center, and we are all converging. And we are all marching in one spirit.
Was it a good atmosphere? It was a buoyant atmosphere. Everybody was
buoyant, very, yeah. And as I say that it was a cold day, but did we feel the cold on that day? No ways. You know, the singing and the walking and the laughter and the buoyancy really didn't make us to feel any cold on that day.
So, Omri, talk to us about the first time you saw police on that day.
Yes, I think we started seeing the police when we were already in Orlando West. What happened is, from Morris Isaacson, we marched on it's a regional road, I think, that road that passes from Jabulani police station, you know, Morris Isaacson goes through Mfulo, and from Mfulo going towards Dube, Maponya shops, and from Maponya shops, then we go towards Orlando West High, what is called Matike High now. So we used that main national road, and as Kifilo was saying, of course, we blocked the roads. You know, the cars were forced to change routes because we were full in the street and we were not allowing cars to pass. So we took over the road, and of course the mood was jubilant. But that main road was like a river, a main river, and tributaries, that is high school, secondary schools, were joining on the way. And some of the students from primary schools were joining on the way. And until we arrived at Orlando West High, when we arrived at Orlando West High, they were writing a half-yearly exam when we arrived at Orlando. So we went there, and then we sent some delegations to go inside, to go and talk to the students there. And the students there, they told us that, no, they are writing a half-yearly exam here, and the principal, Mr. Matsike, is not interested in this much. So we then decided that no, because the principal is not interested, so the students have to decide. So the student at Orlando West High then decided to defy the principal and go out of the schools to join the march. And then from there, when we went up the mountain, just a little bit far away, I mean about 200 meters to 300 meters away from Orlando West High, that's when we started seeing the police. Then the police came there, and
What happened?
The police came with the police came with their dogs, and then we started, you know, the barking of the dog. There was a dog called Shaka, you know, they came with that dog called Shaka that we killed there on that day. So the dogs were barking, and the police now were coming closer to the students, and that is where this incident, this first clashes occurred. They sent the dog to us. That dog was, you know, grabbed with the string, the rope that is normally used for the dog. We hold that dog with it, and we hit it with stones. It was pumped with stones. It was killed with stones, that dog. It died there. And at that time, then the police started the shooting, you know. That's where this shooting of Hector Peterson occurred, around that place. And so we had the sound of the shot, but because it was not many shots, we were not aware that somebody was actually killed. But after some 10, 15 minutes, we heard that, you know, they actually killed somebody. We didn't know the person who was killed at that time, but they said, no, they killed a young boy from primary school and so on. But we didn't know the name. And that's when the mood then changed of the student. That since, well, they're killing us, they're shooting us, we might as well die fighting them now, you know. That's when everything changed, and we started breaking everything. So all the bakeries were attacked, all the business cars were attacked, all police things or anything that we see that we think associated with government, we started attacking them and destroying them. That's when the mood changed. The mood changed because we felt that it doesn't help anymore because they've already killed a young boy. So it doesn't really help to say we're protecting any life. We might as well die fighting. And that changed everything. And that's when everything started to break loose. I will leave it at there.
Was anybody controlling it? Was anybody controlling it amongst the students, or did people just do their own thing?
Well, TAT was in charge because TAT was kept on addressing us, and so even when this killing happened, TAT addressed us and told us that they've killed a young boy. They've killed a young boy. This police, and so we have to fight back because they've killed a young boy. But TAT was in charge. So, but when you are in charge of a big crowd of a couple of thousand, it's not so easy to make sure everybody does exactly what you're looking for. But what actually happened is that, everything went loose. So every government thing or every thing considered to be a white business was then destroyed from that time onwards. Bottle stores were destroyed. Everything that we saw as white business was destroyed. And that's how I would leave it. Yes.
Sorry, was the original plan, did you know that the police would intervene, and was the plan just to march, or was the plan to actually protest and with the anticipation of violence, or was it just the thought process was that it would just be a march?
Yeah, our thought process was just it's going to be a peaceful march up to Orlando Stadium. Up to Orlando Stadium, where all the high schools will be bringing their entourage to come and meet at Orlando Stadium to discuss the way forward. We did not think that the police will interfere on the road. We did not think that the police will shoot people on the road. So we were thinking it will be a peaceful march up to Orlando Stadium. But unfortunately, the intervention of the police near Orlando West High, just above those mountains, there's a small hill next to Orlando High. It's actually the cause that changed everything. The shooting of Hector Peterson there and the Hastings Grove changed everything completely, because that's where they were shot. They were shot around there, both of them, and that changed everything. So because now the students, another thing, the students, because we don't really have much, when you're a student, you don't have much responsibility. So when you feel like, no, it's hell to hell, we have to fight to the end, you don't really care much, unlike when you're a parent. Because when you're a parent, you start thinking, what will my children eat? What will my children? But when you're a student, you don't have that responsibility. It was just a matter of saying, okay, they've killed this young boy, let's fight. Rather fight than to die, running away when they're killing us. So I think that's what changed the psychology and the mood of students, the shooting of that young boy.
Were any of you afraid? Or did the mood take you on another? Were you not fearful for your lives when you knew someone had been killed?
No.
Let me just say, sorry.
Yes.
Because we're a big crowd, I think we could have been somewhere, maybe in the middle, there are people still coming in the back. But for us, me and a group of our friends, the minute we heard the gun going out, we ran into the houses closer. And I must say, I usually say there are unsung heroines out there. The mothers who were at home, women who might not have been working, who were standing in the gates to see what was happening. They opened up their houses. And I remember this particular house where we ran into. And this woman, I think it was about 10 of us, she kind of like put us in the bedroom. She closed the house. She went out to the streets, basically to say, I dare any policeman who can come here. So somewhere, somehow, those women out there really played a part also. So yes, we are not as strong, maybe as Omri. We ran into the houses. We had the guns coming and we ran. And through the windows, we looked and we saw when Hector Peterson was carried by Makuwe and the sister running. And that's what now took us out of the house. We said to them, to the lady who kept us, we said, no, we need to go out now. Anyway, the guns had stopped at that stage. So yeah, some of us ran into the houses.
I'd like to bring in Prince Dube at this point in time, because Prince, you run the Hector Peterson Museum and Memorial in Soweto. Tell us, who was Hector Peterson, and tell us his story that day.
Thank you, and sorry for joining late. I didn't receive the link earlier. Yes, I'm the Chief Curator of the Hector Peterson Museum. Just joined the museum recently in December 2019, so I'm also still new there. We my current exercise is to do a research and also encourage society to conduct a much better research than what we have now. I'm coming to your question on Hector Peterson, but what I would like to say before that is that the museum, since it was opened in 2002, it has shifted a little bit and focused in tourism, mainly in tourism. We've just become a tourist destination more than a cultural institution. So you find that activities such as research, which is much necessary as you are doing now, new information is coming up, things that we didn't know. The question has been focusing on then what happened on the street. This is what we still want to find out as a museum. What exactly happened on that day, from the morning or before that, when the planning was still conducted. I've done a little bit of research with Mr. Pani Mukhatle, who was also supposed to be part of this, but unfortunately, because he's in hospital right now, he was unable to join us. There are exciting stories that are coming up when you hear the preparations, how the date was chosen, why the 16th of June? Was it planned to take place on the 16th of June or what? But you get different or new information on what happened. Also the sports where things happen. We had information, for instance, that the first person was shot at the bridge down there. But we are now told that it's not exactly where it is marked. Hector Peterson himself, there is a spot which is officially marked as where he was shot, but the sister is now showing us another spot where she says Hector was shot. On your question, then direct question, who was Hector Peterson? I don't want to answer it directly because I'm still to do a further research on him as a person, and I know that who his mother was when he was born in 1963 and all that, but I still need to do a further research on him directly.
Okay, but you do run the museum. We know he was a 12-year-old child. He joined the march when he probably shouldn't have joined the march. His sister was on the march, and he was probably the first person shot dead that day on June the 16th.
He was the second. The first one was Hastings Law, yes.
But it is him in that iconic photograph of his lifeless body being carried away with his sister at his side.
Yes, the main reason why the focus was on Hector Peterson is because there were no photographers where Hastings was shot. So the only person who was whose death was recorded, it was Hector Peterson. That's the famous photograph. Changed the whole thing, and then even distorted a little bit of history. And because people thought it was him who was shot first, but the reality is that it was Hastings Law who was shot first.
Right. So, Fala, tell us, what you were in the middle of all of this chaos busy happening. Did you see people being shot with a tear gas around you? Were people running? Explain to us what it was like being in the middle of the thick of things.
No, I'm young. I'm very young.
Yeah, I'm talking to Fala.
Oh, okay.
When we arrived at Orlando West, which is a high school, just to correct my elder Omri, the principal then was Mzaitume, who did not allow the student to go on march. So they were writing, as he said, the June examinations. And incidentally, in the class where I went with others to disturb them from continuing to write, they were writing an Afrikaans examination. So we were disturbed by lots of sounds from the student raising attention to the arrival of the police. When you go out into the foot of Orlando West High School, not the junior school, and look up on Vilakazi Street, there is a tall Bluecomb tree, and there are IBM houses now on the left. It was an open field then, and the police congregated then. And in no time, as Omri said, they released the dog. The dog came. Most of the girls, as Kifilo said, were running away. Guys took stones, threw on it. Some took out their knives on it. Police sent tear gas. We didn't know what it was. It was windy day and the wind blowing more towards them. Tear gas canister was shaken, thrown back at them. And then the shooting started and all hell broke loose. I can't physically say I know where Hector was shot or where Hastings was shot, but based on where the other people start saying this is where they shot him, I could identify that Hastings was the first one to be shot. But both families know the truth. They don't think it should become a historical issue. For editorial purposes, it was important for the editors to come out with a dramatic picture of an only 12-year-old child and actually show. Omri has already elaborated on how pandemonium then prevailed, cat and mouse type of fights with the police. I'm not as brave and as old as Omri was that time, so I tended to be more behind. There was brave students who took dustbin lids as shield, as they had one stone on one head and charged and the police. And that cat and mouse eventually pushed the police to move right up to, as you continue with, I think it's Mahalefele Road. When it's around Morris, it's Mputi Street. And then from Dube, it's Mahalefele Road. As you go to Orlando Stadium, and that bridge, it possibly changes and the name. The police were obviously calling for more support. There is a stage at around the time that the Naledi High students started arriving. So there were more number of students who were congregating, and pandemonium. It was unfortunate if you're a white person around. I saw some white ladies, I don't know if they were journalists or if they were social workers. They were hit with stone by a lot of guys who were protecting them. They were taken to the Methodist Men's, which is just around there, not far from the Mandela old house. And yeah, so it went and it's only later, maybe after around 2, when the helicopter started coming, hiding around, me and a friend of mine, Thabo Mkhele, worried that the police might start shooting from above, decided we should start moving towards home.
So Omri, let us ask the question. Somewhere between 170 and 700 people were shot over the next few days. Tell us what the days that followed June the 16th look like. Let's ask Omri that question.
Yeah, the days that followed June 16 were really haphazard in many ways, because the loss of communication, now we could no longer communicate easily as students, because after June 16, Soweto was actually burning. Most of the bottle stores were burning. Cars were burned. Police cars were destroyed somewhere there. The bakeries were destroyed. So basically, it was smoldering after June 16. Now, from then onwards, it became difficult for student leaders to actually communicate with students properly, because when students are not at school, it's difficult to communicate with them. But we started going to school again in drips and drops. That's where we would get communication as to what must be done, the plans to encourage stay home for parents, not to go to work, and the plans for in future when we wanted to go to Johannesburg, to go and demonstrate in Johannesburg. So those days, I don't remember the exact sequence of those days, but we planned many things, including the stay away for our parents, and also the plan to go to march in Johannesburg in one of the days. So those are some of the plans, but it was no longer properly communicated like before, because students not at school during that time, we didn't have cell phones. There was no Twitter or Facebook. So most of the communication actually was done through at school. And those who didn't come to school, then we had to get information via those that they know. But the communication was difficult after that, So I would leave it at the moment.
Were you afraid for your life?
At that time, no. Now, I think now I'm a coward now. At that time, no, I was not afraid, because at that time I just said, no, they've killed this boy, and then, to hell with them, something like that. But maybe now I must confess I'm a coward. At that time I was not, a little bit brave, and maybe a little bit reckless, maybe. Yeah, but I had no responsibility. I had nothing, to worry about. It was all about myself. So I felt that no, we'd rather die fighting than to run away. Because they killed a young boy who is innocent. What more? What can I say I'm defending anymore? So I would say at that time I was a little bit brave. At that time, not now. So I will leave it at that.
So Peter, we keep on hearing this name, Morris Isaacson High School. Lungi, welcome. Tell us, who was Morris Isaacson? And then I know Peter has questions to ask about the school, because we have so many alumni on the school. Omri, you're alumni. Kafilwe, you're alumni. Fala, you were at Morris Isaacson, is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I was.
So Lungi, tell us about who was Morris Isaacson.
Lungile, you gone. Will you come back, please? Lungile? Oh.
I don't know what has happened to Lungi.
Looked like she was getting locked.
Oh.
I think we've lost her
I'm
for
back.
a second. You're back. You're back.
Yes, sorry. We just had a load reduction and it was not on the schedule. So I might have to switch off my video. Or let me start, but if the connection is weak, I'm going to have to switch off my video.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, sorry about that.
No problem. So first
a
tell
load
me,
reduction, I like that.
First tell me who was Morris Isaacson himself, and then Peter has some questions about the school.
Okay. Well, I would like to firstly express that I feel very much privileged to be part of this discussion today as a young person, and I feel very privileged because not so many people at my age are interested on this history, due to perhaps it was underdocumented, but it is just, being part of this discussion has given me an exercise to really do the research on who's Morris Isaacson. And I would like to get a few extracts from the Jewish report that I've read through about who was Morris Isaacson, and also add my visions about what I think about who Morris Isaacson was. So I'm just going to read 2 paragraphs. So Morris Isaacson was a visionary. He had wisdom, he had a motivation, he had a belief. His thinking was ahead of his time, which I think it was quite true. So he came to South Africa in 1896 after the introduction after the introduction of his country, when they introduced sale of alcohol products, which was a monopoly system. And then that's when he decided to immigrate to South Africa. But just to go through, not to waste anybody's time, so he was also part of the Labour Party, and Forward was a protagonist of the formation of the Jewish War Relief Fund. By the end of the First World War, Morris was a prominent Jewish leader, a president of the Jewish Guild, a treasurer of the Jewish War Memorial Fund, and later chairman of the SA Jewish Orphanage. In Morris' later years, a Fieldman, who was an MEC in the mid-1940s, was instrumental in involving him in Black education. After his wife, Mavis, died in 1949, he was the major contributor to the establishment of the Mavis Isaacson Hall in Morocco, which served as a daycare crèche for working mothers in Soweto. In remembrance of these events, according to the June 16th Soweto Uprising, which is now a public holiday, the Morris Isaacson names continues to live on, and it evokes positive memories of the first Jews who actively opposed the nationalist regime. And I think as a young person and in my experience of thinking about who Morris Isaacson was, I think I have experienced Morris Isaacson through other people, and I would like to name a few people who actually contributed to his legacy here on site. Firstly, I would like to mention Isaac Jaffe and Mendel Kaplan, who are from Cape Gate, who later on met Robert Brooks, and they were all a catalyst of building the community hall, which is front of our premises, and the music center, which is now servicing over 300 children with music education, and the center is widely known as Morris Isaacson Center for Music. So I think his spirit has just lived on over the years, has transcended, and it has used other people to create more so that the children of Soweto can still have access to education, good education, and also have access to music education, which is quite important to build a quite healthy, mental well-brought society. So yeah, and yeah, I think thus far that will be my take on it.
Yes. Can I just ask those who were there what the name Morris Isaacson means to you? So Kafilwe, Omri, Phala, what does it mean to you, the name Morris Isaacson? Did it when you were at school there, did it mean anything, or was just a name of a school?
Look, it's always meant a lot, because originally, as both Kifilo and Omri will allude to, it was Mohloding. So I grew up possibly 400-500 meters from the school. So I used to look up those older students wearing their gray flannels, the ladies with their navy blue tunic, the coat and the jerseys, and thinking one day I will go to the school. And later we came to know that the reason why it changed from Mohloding to Morris Isaacson is because after the first principal, Mr. Derek Ove, needed to increase the number of classes so that it becomes a higher school, not just a secondary school, from Mohloding Secondary to Morris Isaacson Senior Secondary or High School. And that's the foundation of Morris Isaacson. Had funded the project. We also were aware of Mavis Hall, which is also in White City, Jabavu. I know the history books will say Morocco, because there used to be demarcation that placed it in Morocco, but it's also in Jabavu. So I think the name got even more international acclaimed after the June 16 events, yes.
Did you ever wonder who the man was? I mean, did any of you ever wonder about the person the school was named after?
I think because at Morris Isaacson, sorry Kifilo, we were led by people like Lekhauma Tabati, who made us to be curious, to be inquisitive. We learned about who the funder. The other school, there's another school that
Oh, I think we're losing you, Phala.
We can't hear you.
Which is a primary school. I went to another school. Okay, let others speak.
Let me just fill up. I think Phala wanted to also say Isaacson Primary. So we always actually wondered whether there was a relationship. But I must say that Omri will correct me, and Phala, I think 2017, 18, when the I think it's the great-grandson of Morris Isaacson visited with his wife. And I think that for us now, look at, we are already, you know, out of the school at that stage, alumni. And I think we're brought closer, much closer to understanding the man behind the name itself. So the great-grandson visited, and I think that made a difference. I'm not sure, Omri and Phala, whether Isaacson Primary was also, you know, part of Morris Isaacson's contributions in terms of the education in our country. I don't know, but it has the same name, you know, primary school.
Omri, as a final word on the section, is there a bond between the alumni of 1976? Do you keep in touch with each other? You've all lived through history. You are eyewitnesses to history. So Omri, when you see Kafilwe and Phala on the screen, is there a sense of camaraderie that still exists 45 years later?
Well, we still have meetings now because of COVID-19. We have Zoom meetings like we do now. So we do meet, we still keep the alumni at Morris Isaacson, and we communicate. Of course, you know, some generations communicate more than other generations. But I would say that Morris Isaacson, the man, has really contributed a lot. But, you know, with finance, if there was no good leadership at the school would not have reached what it reached now. We have to commend Derek Kobe, the first principal of Morris Isaacson, who actually established the ethos at the school, good quality education at the school, to complement the financial support that Morris provided. I have to emphasize that because money without good quality education will just be wasted. So Derek Kobe established a very solid foundation for education for the school and utilized the finances that were provided by Morris Isaacson Trust, you know, to actually to produce better quality students. And this is where the combination is. And Isaacson that they are talking about, primary school, is part of that product. And the Mavis Hall is part of that product. So in terms of us, Morris Isaacson is really a big funder of Black education under apartheid when it was not fashionable. So we are very, very happy of what he did, and we commend him even now in his grave that he did well under apartheid to support Black education. But I would say that, you know, as alumni, you know, Morris Isaacson started from 1956 as Mkhlorin's secondary school. We do have, you know, connection, but it's not as solid for the 50s. Some of those have passed on because they are old. And the 60s, some of them are no longer alive, the others are. So we don't keep the relationship very close, but we're in the process of compiling a history book of the school, you know, under Professor Clive Glazer at Wits. So that history book will actually trace the school from 1956 when it was established as Mkhlorin Secondary up to Morris Isaacson up to 1994, because we thought they will take it up to 1994 when apartheid ended.
So yes. Omri, sorry to interrupt. In order to end the section, Prince, very briefly, tell us, if people come to Soweto today, is the Hector Pieterson Museum open? Can they still visit during the period of COVID, or are you closed during COVID? And once COVID is over, where do we find you and where can we visit the Hector Pieterson Memorial and Museum? Let's unmute you.
Thank you. Yes, when President Ramaphosa locked down the country in 2020 in March, we closed the museum. It has been closed until May this year. We reopened. We opened from Tuesday until Sunday, 10 till 5. We closed on Mondays and Christmas and Good Fridays. but the other holidays we are open. We do have people coming in now, but not as much as they did before COVID, especially the international visitors. The percentage has gone down. It's only the locals now. The percentage of the local visitors has grown higher than the international, which was the other way around before COVID, for obvious reasons. Yes.
Well, I've been to your museum on a number of occasions, so I strongly recommend it for everyone. I want to say to all of the panelists who've been on for the last hour or so, to the alumni of Morris Isaacson, a huge thank you for joining us this evening. We're going to move on next. Peter is going to speak to Max du Preez, who was in fact a cub journalist at the time. But before we do, tonight is just one of a series of 99 webinars where we've been telling stories. And the South African Jewish Report has really been telling your stories for the last 23 years. And we would love you to join the family. So we have a patron campaign, and any donations or joining as a patron would be more than welcome. And I'm going to ask Danny just very quickly to show our patron campaign 30-second video, and then we're going to move on shortly thereafter with Peter and Max having an editor's discussion about what it was like being a journalist on the 16th of June, 1976. So if you would like to join as a patron of the South African Jewish Report, or alternatively make a donation so Peter and a remarkable team of journalists can continue to deliver you the most remarkable service free of charge, which they do, distributing to 240 locations around the country, giving you a newspaper delivered to your homes and your townhouses. We're going to put a poll on the screen. So Danny, I hope you have a poll that you're going to put up on people's screens right now, so we can ask people to join as patrons of the South African Jewish Report. Danny, I don't see our poll, so should you turn on your camera and tell us what's happening?
Hello, Howard. You need to make me co-host of this webinar. It's a shocker. I know.
Are you no longer co-host?
I'm not. I don't know what happened. I'm just like one of the guys enjoying the show, like everyone else, I guess.
You're a co-host, so we're just asking everyone, if you are able to at this point in time, please become a patron of the South African Jewish Report or make a donation. We're also giving away at this point in time. We've given away to our patrons amazing prizes. We gave away a bed worth 20-something thousand rand last week. This week, we're giving away 5 filler hoodies or sweatshirts. We've given away trips to the Kruger Park, to the luxury safari camp at Ndluli. We've given that away. We've given away vouchers to the Greenside CBD Cafe and Vegan Cafe. So our patrons are getting enormous value from the sort of stuff that we're doing. And most importantly, you supporting us in our ability to continue to tell stories like we're telling tonight. So we urge you, please join as a patron. Just click on the poll that we have. We'll send you an email. No donation is too small. If you want to give us 5 rand, 5 rand is okay, but we'd love you to become part of the family. So we're going to leave that up for about another 40 or 50 seconds or so. But in the meantime, Max du Preez, let's turn on your camera. There you are. Dina and I are going to fade into the background, and we're going to leave it to the 2 professional journalists to have a discussion about June the 16th, 1976.
Max, tell me, how old were you on that day?
I was 23
sure, that's
years
young.
old.
Where were you working, and what beat did you have?
I was, and this is telling of the mindset of the time. Yeah. I was working at Beeld, the Afrikaans newspaper, which that's just started, by the way. Okay. And I was a cub reporter. I was doing crime. And most journalists who were sent to cover Soweto in June 76 were crime reporters, because white people thought this wasn't politics, this was crime, which struck me very quickly, you know.
Yes.
Yeah, so I was very young, and it's quite special for me to sit here and listen to Omri and Fakilwe and Paula, because they're talking about a moment where I was too. I might have seen them on the other side, but as a white journalist, or as a journalist, I was behind the police lines.
Yeah, and you were also much older than them.
On that morning, what they're talking is what I experienced, but from behind the police lines. I was very struck. I was very struck by the discipline of the young students.
Yeah.
And
talk to me. Let's start from the beginning of the day. Who sent you there and what happened? How did you get there? What happened?
Well, we knew that there was going to be that there were problems before in the days preceding, a couple of small marches, and then the big announcement was made that there will be a big march. So I got there, I think about 7 o'clock in the morning, and went straight to Preez police station. I was driving a very beautiful old Peugeot 404, I remember still, which was the favorite press car at the time, and went to Preez police station, and they said, no, I should follow these cops. They're on their way to Orlando West because the trouble is there. And we sort of drove behind them. And there we stood. I mean, I had never experienced anything like this before in my life. And I don't think anybody had. You know, I looked at these young people, and what struck me immediately is they were like 3, 4, 5 years younger than me. And there I was just doing a little job. It's exciting. And they were prepared, I saw very quickly by 11 o'clock that morning, they were prepared to put their lives on the line. And that to me was completely alien. And I've many, many times in my life had people ask me, so as a goeie Afrikaner seun van Kroonstad, how come you followed a completely different path politically? And I always have to say, my life changed on the morning of the 16th of June, 1976, when I looked at these young people, spirited and angry, and so brave. And I thought, what universe do they live in that I don't occupy? What is there that I didn't know for 23 or 24 years? And I looked at them. And I can't say I had a sense that the whole country was going to change. I got that sense very quickly after that. But I was astonished at the bravery of young people, seeing someone die and not running away, being prepared to be the next one. Yeah. That was quite extraordinary. But I was struck in the beginning by the fear of the young people with the dogs and the tear gas and the guns, and by the fear of the young policemen. Really? They had never experienced anything like this before either. And until that one cop pulled his pistol out and shot, that's, as Omri said, that's when things changed.
Yes. And
I saw this on the 17th, because the 17th, the very next day, was much worse.
Yes.
The young people were angrier and more desperate, and the cops became more cruel, and that was the pattern.
Max, before you go to the next day, let's go back to June 16th. Were you afraid? And did you feel, I mean, what did you know about what was going on for these youngsters before then?
Yeah, all we knew was that we knew there was a man called Tsietsi Mashinini.
Yes.
And I find it a bit sad, may I interject myself and say, that we talk about Hector Peterson, we talk about a lot of people, but Tsietsi Mashinini was a giant in those days. And maybe somebody will tell us his very sad past, very sad life after that. He left the country, and it's a very tragic story. But he was a giant. Other people like Murphy Morobe, whom we now know because he became a big player in the UDF later.
Yes.
But those were the giants. They were very strong, very organized, and we need to remember them and say their names. And Seth Mazibuko.
Yes, exactly. And what did you feel? I mean, you were right there. You may have been behind the police, but anything could have happened. Were you afraid?
Yeah.
Were you?
Yes. I was desperately afraid because it was unknown.
Yeah.
You could sense the anger. You could see the police. I had never known anything like that. Nothing like that had happened in my life. I mean, the last time something like that happened was in 1960, when I was barely in school in Sharpeville. So nothing had happened because remember, there was this time of quiet between 1960. There was Sharpeville, then the ANC and the PAC got banned. Mandela, Sisulu, and those guys got sent to Robben Island. Many of the ANC leaders went into exile. So there was this lull. And I think the apartheid masters didn't understand it. And the other name that we need to mention tonight is Steve Bantobiko. Yes. Because many of those people like Murphy Morobe and Tsetse Mashinini were inspired by his ideas of Black consciousness. It wasn't the ANC. There wasn't talk about the ANC then. It wasn't an ANC-led protest. So those are the things that I think we need to also remind ourselves.
Max, when you contacted your newsroom afterwards, what was the reaction? What did
in those days you have to travel back to the office because there were no cell phones.
Okay.
So
yes.
At the end of the day, you go back.
Yeah.
And
you had this life-changing experience, and you go back to this office where most of the people were oblivious and didn't really care.
Yeah, and I think the general idea was unruly, revolutionary blacks, communists, terrorists, and fear, profound fear that I felt as a white person standing there. But I think most white people felt that fear, that suddenly we were confronted with black anger, not of old people, but of people of 16, 17, 18, 19 years old. So there was a fear of the future. And I mean, older people will tell you. 1976, a lot of people left the country. White people fled. There was a lot of fear. Yeah, I was afraid. It was a mixture of fear and bewilderment of what the hell is happening in my country that I didn't know of.
And you were a cub reporter. Now, I know the hierarchy in newsrooms, and a cub reporter comes back and says, this and this and this has happened. And I'm sure there were photographs, but I mean, did they take you seriously? And what was it front page? Did it make the news?
Oh yeah. It was in every newspaper. It was the front page, especially because people died. I think they took me seriously in the sense that I wrote a straightforward account of what I had seen. And of course, as we used to do in those days, you got the generals to comment and the politicians. So there was no denying that something spectacular and something really important had happened. But I think the feeling was it was an explosion and it was now over. And that's where the next day happened, and the next day happened, and this went on for a year, and I spent possibly a whole year going to either Soweto or Alexandra every morning and staying there until dark. Now, you have to have a heart of real stone for that not to change you as a young white person.
Max, and over that period, I mean, you started off behind the police. Over that period, did you get to know the people who lived in Soweto? Did you, yeah, what happened?
Oh, not then.
No.
No, then the Soweto was a place to go to. I'd never been there before. I'd never been to Soweto before, but I was only in Joburg for a year.
No, after that, what I'm saying is after June 16th.
I only went there to do news stories, and for a year or two, that was about violence and protest.
Yeah.
So no, I don't think we ever tried to find out. So how do these people actually live? I mean, what do the ordinary people feel about this? There was a very, very strong sort of news-driven kind of thing of what is next? Who's behind this? What's, how's that going to influence the economy and the rand and stuff?
Yeah. But your life.
Years after, of course. I mean, I became great friends with Murphy Morobe. I count many of those matriculants as my social friends, but many years later, in the 80s only.
Okay. Max, thank you so much. This has been wonderful. It's been wonderful talking to you. I'm going to hand back to Howard and Dina for the next section, but we'd love you to stay on and listen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Howard, Dina?
So if we can ask Shana to turn on her camera, and Janet as well.
Janet, indeed.
And
then
I'm handing over to Dina for this segment.
It's all just a handover. So hello, so Janet and Shana, it is so lovely to have you with us. Janet, I know that this conversation started off at a birthday, and when we learned your story, I was like, we have to get this out there. I had never heard the story before, and I think it is an absolutely fascinating story of your father, who I'm sorry we never met, because he was such an incredible man. And as the story you've told of him and what he was doing that day and why he was in Soweto just sort of showed to his character and how he's remembered. So Shana, thank you as well. Where did your glasses go? Okay. So I'm so happy that we've got both of you and of your father, Dr. Melville Edelstein, who was, I would say, a pioneer in terms of being in Soweto in 1976, and the good work and the commitment that he showed to the community and uplifting society in general. So Janet and Shana, I don't know how you want to tell the story, but I think, we'd love to hear from you how your father came to be involved and what he was doing. He was one of the first, I think there were only 2 white people killed in the Soweto riots, and he was one of them. He was the first one. So to hear your whole story, I think the audience would really enjoy it. Well, not enjoy it, but learn from it.
Well, I just want to say I'm actually sitting here gobsmacked as well, because, and thank you for bringing us on, because we're sitting with a whole panel of people, and I just said to my sister, I was just thinking, did my father really die there on that day? Because we've heard on this panel now from people that were there, a reporter, and no one knew who he was, which is so upsetting. But anyway, so I'm happy they're here so that we can tell them who he was. So his name was Dr. Edelstein, and when we were young children, we were a white family who got teased, who got told, I don't even want to tell you what we went through, because my father was, I would say, and he was known to be the unsung hero actually of the Soweto riots. And obviously in our eyes, and many people that I've spoken to, Black people who knew my father that I came across afterwards, used to just burst out crying. And there is the photographer, Pete, I think he's since passed away, that I met with many years ago, who took the photo of my father lying there with a sign, on his chest. And he was killed before Hector Peterson, apparently, as far as we know. And we were only told, unfortunately, at 6 o'clock that day. And he was killed by the very people that loved him and that he loved, and he was fighting for their cause. And he's a Jew, as well, like Morris Isaacson. And he went in there every single day of his life to make sure that everybody got to school, all these children. And he was brave. He was such a brave human being because, you know, he was looked upon, obviously, I don't want to say with the word, what they used to call white people in those days that were supporting black people in the apartheid years. What a brave human being. And he was humble. And that's why maybe a lot of people didn't know who he was. But he was definitely involved with Murphy Morobe. There's a documentary on my father. So I'd love after this for you to send the link to everyone, a whole hour documentary of people just talking how amazing he was. And
I
for
think
me,
also, Jan, you can also mention, I mean, not only did he help school kids, you know, deal with the situation at hand as best as he could, but he managed the passes to enable people who were not employed, how he could create these shifts in work programs so that a person having a full day could be divided into different work times, different shifts to work. So people were allowed into the center, into the city. He created that. It wasn't just kids. And as Jan, we were SMSing each other going, what are we listening to? Like, what is going on here? You know, was he seriously there? Maybe he wasn't there. Maybe he's hiding somewhere, you know?
Anyway, be that as it may, of course he was there.
That's why I think it's so important that you're both of you at the time. Obviously, you said, Janet, to me, you said that he knew that the riots were planned and he decided consciously
he felt so safe there.
He was going to go into Soweto that day. He wanted to work.
He felt very safe there, and he actually went back. The story is that he went back because his staff, you know, Perret Jacques, shame. I mean, but she had already got out. So he was trying to get out because he obviously knew there was trouble, but he went back to save her, and she got out. And, you know, just to say that over the years, you know, I mean, for us, we've obviously honored him every year as we do. And we were amazed. And I went with Shana to the Truth Commission. So we were invited, which I felt good about because he deserves his place in history. Unfortunately, not so much in the history books enough. You know, when we got to King David with our children, I will never forget. The first year, they said, oh, it's the 16th of June, and there's all these pictures up of Hector Peterson, and then we're sitting with our children, and I had to go, the principal said, you know that their grandfather was killed on this day. He's an absolute hero in the Soweto riots. And oh my gosh, yes, you know, so I mean, even a lot of Jewish people that I have met over the years didn't know. But, you know, over the last couple of years, we've had a person by the name of Kevin Harris who came and decided he was obsessed with the whole, you know, he said, you've got to get your dad's story out there. And he made this documentary, and I've had BBC, I've been on the BBC radio, I've been BBC reporter, came and did like a half an hour last year for Mandela Day. And then we had a beautiful bar mitzvah in Soweto. 40 years later, they did. And I think that it's interesting because they asked me at the Truth Commission, what would you like, you know, to happen? I said, it's not about money. We wanted recognition, you know, Hector Peterson had a whole museum, this one, you know, anyway, and even Jewish museums that were built didn't mention my father. So that for me was even worse. But, you know, sometimes I've said to Shana, and Shana's, I'd love to meet people who knew my dad that were at that school. So I would love to find people who are still alive today, and that knew who my father was, because obviously there was.
It looks like Kana and Omri have both raised their hands, and they have something to say.
I wonder if they knew him. That would be great. Thank you.
Omri,
that's why I think both Janet and I, well, definitely, so I'll speak for myself, why we're here, why I'm here, because I'd love to know more. You know, for me, it happened the day my father, it was the day before my birthday. My birthday's tomorrow. I turned 11. I won't tell you how old I am, old girl. But tomorrow is my birthday. And Petra was actually in my year. and in my class at the time. And my father was, before he gave me, I wanted wishbone earrings for my birthday, and he gave me the earrings before my birthday. He gave it to me before, and he said, I'm giving you I'm giving you this gift. I've got a thing. I've got an absolute thing. My family will tell you, my friends will tell you, whatever you do, don't ever give me a gift before my birthday. I think he had a second sense. He had a premonition, because he never done that before. But before June the 16th, in fact, it was the morning of the 15th, he gave me that gift, and he said, this is your birthday present, way before the day. And I was so young. That's how old I was. And Janet was really the chosen representative. She was the family spokesperson. And so for me, at my age now, it is so important that I collect a greater understanding about what happened from your perspective and the relationship you had with my father, because there was a relationship, as I understand.
So before we come on to Omri and Phala, one of the people who messaged us earlier was Rabbi Yossi Goldman, who said, please don't forget that Dr. Edelstein was a key member of the Sydenham Shul Committee. He was actively involved in his community. As much as he cared about the rights of the underprivileged, he cared deeply about the rights of the Jewish community as well, and he built the Jewish community too. So Omri and Phala, did you have a relationship? Did you know who Dr. Edelstein was at all?
Look, let me start first by saying I commiserate with you, Janet and Shana. The first time I met Edelsteins, I think you might be related to him. I'm trying to think of the name. They're into human coaching and stuff like that. And I had a conversation with them. I used to play soccer at that number 2 office, which was a Department of Labor office. So there were a few white people who worked there, and there were some black people, but it specialized with youth who had stopped going to school and were looking for work. We called it specials, which is sort of a work permit. So before they could actually get their ID, they will have to go there. So I've never interacted with him as a person, but became aware of his untimely death the following day on the papers when it was announced that a Dr. Edelstein, who was a social worker at the Department of Labor, unfortunately died. My summation, contrary to your thinking, Janet, was that he would have been killed while we were still in Orlando West, whether by other students, whether by the angry black people as they started hearing through the newspaper, through the news that children are being killed in Orlando West. I was very close to a few people who got arrested for his murder, which it was. One of them was my classmate, Hoffman Panda. The other one is actually is an uncle to Nelson Mandela's son, the king of Mveso. That's Ronnie Musetle. He was an Orlando West student. The other one was Tutu. His parents owned the shop opposite where Dr. Edelstein worked. The other one was an unemployed youth called Matefe. The common thing among all of them was that they had a jersey number 15, which was fashionable to young black youth those days. There should have been some basketball player in the USA who wore that jersey. It was more like fashionable. And I think police had to do something. Some important white men had died they had to make sure that they make some arrests very quickly. Ronnie was arrested whilst he was breaking into a bottle store in Buffalo. But during the death, he definitely was in Orlando West. So is Hoffman, because I knew we were all together there. I cannot account for Tefe and for Tutu, but all of them ended up getting out after being represented by George Bezos, because the police didn't have concrete information. Most people suspected to have unfortunately killed your father. It's people who worked, who he helped all the time, who were unemployed boys who had gone to that center and went around in the township when the anger happened, as Omri was explaining earlier on, and people, anything that had to do with a municipality office got banned and so forth. And unfortunately, Dr. Edelstein, I commiserate with you guys, but personally, I had never met him.
Thank you.
Omri, did you come across Dr. Edelstein at all?
No, I've never spoken to him. I've seen him at a distance, passing at those offices. And I was told that he's the man who helps people who are looking for jobs, people who are unemployed who are looking for jobs. My elder uncles who lives around Central Western Jabaf. But before I say all this, I wish to say to, Dina and Janet, condolences to the family. We are very sorry of what happened. We want to say that, the students of Morris Isaacson knew him, and they would have protected him if they were there. We think that people who killed him were, as Pala was saying, probably unemployed youth who have been trying to get jobs who are not getting jobs. But the student of Morris Isaacson would have protected him. What we did, we had white teachers at school, and we protected them. And we made sure that they move out of Soweto safely. And I want to say from the bosom of my heart, on behalf of my colleagues at Morris Isaacson, that we are very, very sorry of what happened to your father. And be aware that we share your grief. We share your grief. On a note of a factual note, as I say, we were not there at the time when he was killed. We were already in Orlando West, most of us of Morris Isaacson. So the people who killed him were aware that we were not there. So this would have been remnants of the marches and the criminals around, because we were already in Orlando West at that time. So, and it's very sad what happened, but we want to say that from the bosom of our hearts, we're very sorry for what happened to the family. He was a good man. He didn't deserve to die in that way, and we're very sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, he was warned to get out, as Janet mentioned earlier, but he went back in. So
just Howard, if I could just explain the distance so that it makes sense to you. From Morris Isaacson High School to Orlando West, where to Orlando West, where
Okay, Pala, I'm just turning off your video because your video is interfering with your sound.
Shootings and everything happened.
Sorry, Pala, can you just repeat that? Sorry, yeah, your internet was being affected by your video, so I've just turned off your video. If you could just repeat that, please.
Am I clearer now?
Yeah, much clearer.
Yeah, I'm saying from Morris Isaacson to Orlando West, it's a distance of ±7 kilometers. Where Dr. Edelstein worked and where Morris Isaacson is, it's about 300, 400 meters. It's very, very close. And that proximity makes it logical that if Morris Isaacson was behind all this malaise, everything that happened, so the logic that the student from there would have participated in the killing of Dr. Edelstein. Makes sense to someone that doesn't understand the distance as to, in terms of the events of the days. Where were the students of Morris Isaacson located? What time was Dr. Edelstein really killed? And where could have most of the Morris Isaacson students have been? It's not making any excuses for any other people or any other students of Morris Isaacson that we are unaware of that might have killed him on the day.
Shauna and Janet, there is a memorial to your father. I've been to the memorial to your father. It's a big rock not far from Morris Isaacson School. But there was a family bar mitzvah, and there's a wonderful sense of closure that must have happened. Tell us the story of the family bar mitzvah in Soweto at the memorial.
That was Shauna's son, so does she want to tell it? So Shauna's son, who was born, I don't know, almost, well. Sean, you're on mute.
Do you want to meet Levi?
Yes.
He's in matric, so this is going to be a hard one. He's writing tomorrow. Hold on, but I'll get him. So I was actually away in Israel with my daughter. She won a competition, and my brother-in-law, Janet's husband, phoned me to say, I can get a Torah. Okay, wait, let me go back. Levi was born on the 9th of June. And when I was told that he was going to be, because it was a Caesar baby, that he would be born on the 16th, I said, no, not that day. Bring it earlier. Definitely not. Anyway, long story short, as it happens, he was due, the Caesar was due on the 16th, but they had to keep him in. So he was born on the 9th. And obviously his bris happened on the 16th. And lo and behold.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, Levi. Pop down so we can see you.
There we go, put the camera.
Boy who did a bar mitzvah in Soweto.
So tell us about your bar mitzvah.
It was quite crazy from the beginning, because when we were like on the road to Soweto, it's fine, I'll keep it down.
Okay, not a close-up, eh?
No, it's fine.
Yeah.
So when we were on the road, we were like in this one car, and there was like all police cars. We were like in an escort. So like from the beginning, you kind of feel like still today, you kind of feel like you have to be protected in that area, obviously. And we were going down, and we get out and look around and everything, and we walk to like this plaque. I'm not sure, it was quite long ago and I don't remember too much, but.
But did you know how important that, did you feel how important it was?
Yeah, it was like the community there, the Jewish community as well, like everyone coming, all like very diverse as well, how I pictured it. And it was like, you could feel it even for me on my balmy, it's very special. And yeah, I really loved it.
Yeah, so as I was saying, yeah, Sarah it was at Beitat Futsot in Israel that she won that competition, and the woman who was managing at the time she actually landed up coming to the bar mitzvah, and we were driving in convoy. There were about 25 cars. Between Ellen and my husband, they'd organized the mini Torah. And, we always say, Levi's the last. How many boys?
Well, not the last, there's the last.
No, the last boy.
Yeah.
So the last barmy between Jan and I, we've got 5 sons. And my dad had to go to one of them, right? So we're always very grateful that could in effect, it could happen. And I mean, Lee, talk about how special it was.
So, yeah, I mean, everything about it, you know, especially being my bar mitzvah and get to experience that kind of stuff it's how can I say it? The feeling is quite memorable in a way that you just kind of felt so excited, and it was just like all this feeling of community, which was like still today extremely special. And from then on, it's like, even at school, I had to take history, you know, I have to know all about this stuff. And I just love what my mother's dad had to do and my grandpa. And the only thing I could say is that I wish I got to meet him, you know.
Well, one of the true heroes of South Africa. And what an amazing story. We've posted the story into the chat section on Zoom, YouTube, and Facebook, so people can actually go and read the Jewish Report article about your bar mitzvah in Soweto.
That's quite cool.
And we had a lot of people. I just want to quickly say there were a lot of people that knew my dad, actually, on that day, when I think about it, that arrived there and spoke about him, that had known him very well. So that was comforting. And Lorva's family as well were there, and we had lunch with them afterwards.
But that it all kind of came together so seamlessly, you know, and
40 years.
They were toying on the streets, and we were doing Hava Nagila, you know, basically, you know, it was like, and it was the same emotion, the same feeling, the same oneness, if I could use that word. There was this just cohesiveness and this oneness and this togetherness, and it was special for everybody. And it was in the street, so people were just, you know, coming in and checking it out. And of course, when you see the tefillin, you wonder, what was that one that said, somebody said, Jan, to you, what was that joke that somebody made, what's the third eye? You know, people didn't know what is this strange,
yeah,
what was that?
It's Kaddish for my father, Ellen, and Shauna's husband, Sean, my husband, and they.
No, Levi had it, Jan, on his.
Oh, okay.
It was his feeling during that, and somebody had asked. Huh?
What is
yeah. And I mean, it is a strange garment, right? An accessory, should I say? And they're wondering if that was sort of somebody asked if that's a third eye, but the way the whole thing just came together it was insane. It was so surreal. I cannot tell you. And in fact, my late father's sister, Sonia, I had her on my phone because I wanted her, you know, to journey with us through the whole.
She lives in Israel.
She lives in Israel, and I wanted her to journey with us. She couldn't have traveled. She's very old, and to be part of this incredible ceremony. It was.
So Merle Karp, who's watching us on YouTube, says, I knew Dr. Melville Edelstein. Our families lived in the same street in Bramley Gardens. We were both involved in, it says, Hatikva.
It was amazing.
Who's that, Jan?
That's Merle Karp. But I think it's important that people know it is safe to go into Soweto. I go into Soweto on a very regular basis, or at least pre-COVID I did. It's safe to go to the memorial to your dad. I've been to the memorial to your dad. It's safe to go to the Hector Pieterson Museum. It's safe to go to the Morris Isaacson School. It's safe to go to the Apartheid Museum. These are all parts of our history. And we must feel free to go and reclaim those parts of our history. Yes. Your father is one of the true great heroes of South Africa, and he must be memorialized. And our community and our viewers must go and participate and go to those moments and leave a stone on his memorial, because that is the sort of example of the sort of Jews in South Africa that make us all proud.
What was amazing, I'll just quickly tell you, was the late Tandin Lovo and I actually gave a talk at the Hector Pieterson Museum, and we wanted to educate young children about both, you know, my father, and so many of them came up to me afterwards who didn't know him, and, you know, just wanted to give me a hug and say, wow, I didn't know about young African children who were listening to us talking, and she'd known my dad, Tandi. So it was amazing, and I think that's, as you said, is important because, and I have been and spoken with Antoinette as well, Peterson, at some of the events where we've been asked to talk about my dad.
No, she was actually supposed to be on, but she's got a lot of commitments today, so her schedule was a bit crazy.
I'm sure.
But I think that just that recognition from Omri and Pala must mean a lot to you guys, because obviously, so you say people didn't know he was, but clearly they did know exactly who he was, and they understood the value that he added to the community and the humanity that he brought, and the fact that he was a pioneer in really challenging times, where it wasn't the norm to try and help and create social upliftment, and he literally risked and lost his life to it.
You know, that's sad. That's part of the sadness, I think, for me. I mean, is that as much of it is documented somewhere, that his work in particular with the Orlando Work Center, because I went there, they've actually got a whole sewing, there was a whole sewing room, and I really wanted to try and revive that. But we couldn't find out who owns it now and how to improve it, how we're going to renovate it. We were, Janet and myself, we were 100% committed to recreating the center in his name. And still today, we still haven't found any answers as to who owns it and so on. And when I went there the other day with Ephraim, because I sold myself, but I really wanted to get involved in something, a give back. And half of it's been burnt down. I haven't even told you, Jan. Half of it's been burnt down. The only thing that remains is the sewing center. Everything else is gone. And we really wanted to invest time and energy, and we can, into creating the center, recreating it in his name. And if anyone can put it out there and help us, because we've tried, it's still an option that we would be very willing to look at and to get involved with.
And I think that
amazing. You also
just quickly say that we've both been involved in education, obviously consciously or not, to continue my father's work in some way. And I've done quite a lot of work with a lot of schools in Soweto and all over, bringing this organization, ECL, Enhancing Children's Learning. And so we both, in our own ways, have carried his work forward, and we will continue to do that together.
Incredible. And thank you so much for sharing your story. I know it's not always easy, and we wish you long life. And there's a lot of messages that come in from Jean Garlick. I knew him, what a great man. I knew your mother from Witbank, and then Mark Kramer wishing Janet, Sean, and Rona long and good life. So thank you, and thank you for his commitment, and the fact that you carry on his legacy is truly the tribute, I think, of a great man. So thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thanks for joining us. So Oren Kaplan, memorializing the events of the 16th of June and Morris Isaacson, we've heard the story of this Jewish immigrant actively involved in the Jewish community, building institutions, funding education. There's a long relationship between your family and your family's business, Cape Gate, and this Morris Isaacson School. How did that all happen?
Thanks, Howard. Thank you, Howard. It's been a wonderful presentation. I'm going to do my best to keep it short in the spirit of my father. It's really the connections, Howard, is with my father. And he always liked to make a presentation based on 3 questions that seem to be disjointed, which he joined together. So I hope you don't mind. In his spirit, I'll try the same thing. And the question is really, what was the connection between Morris Isaacson, the philanthropist, El Salvador, the country, and a Viennese opera singer? And the answer is 3 separate stories, very quickly. The first was there was a family friend who was a volunteer on an ANC cultural committee in the early 2000s, and Morris Isaacson, the school, came up for discussion at this committee, and it was suggested that perhaps there was another Jewish philanthropist who wanted to continue the wonderful work of Morris Isaacson. And this person who was part of the committee saw my father at his favorite trattoria in Oaklands, and he was sitting probably with Isaac Joffrey, who was mentioned earlier, and possibly Nathan Friedman. And she went up to him and suggested that there was an opportunity perhaps for another Jewish philanthropist to get involved with the Morris Isaacson School. And he thought,
can we presume this family friend was Joy Copland?
How can you name someone without permission, Howard? It's really
Joy won't mind.
Joy will love it, but that's not the point. Anyway, Joy was instrumental in bringing the idea to Mendel's attention, and I thank her. She made sure I had my facts right earlier in the week. So that's the first part. That's Morris Isaacson and Mendel. The second part is that completely separately, Mendel was asked, my father was asked to be the consul general in South Africa for a country called El Salvador. And he wasn't very big into honorifics. He didn't like them all that much, but he agreed on this occasion. And the reason why he agreed on this occasion was because El Salvador was one of a handful, I don't know the exact number, of countries whose only diplomatic relations in Israel was in Jerusalem. So they had officially recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and moved their diplomatic presence there. And so on that basis, he thought it was the right thing to do and agreed to become the representative in South Africa of El Salvador. And as the representative, he had to present his credentials to the president. And as you know, when you go and present your credentials, the president stands alone and they call in and announce the representative. So the president at the time was Thabo Mbeki, and Thabo Mbeki was standing on his own, and it was announced the representative of El Salvador, and in walked Mendel Kaplan. And Thabo Mbeki said, Mendel, what's going on? So he explained to him the story of Jerusalem and El Salvador, to which evidently or apparently President Mbeki replied, it's wonderful that you do and you're so involved with Israel and your people and that you do so much for them. It would be wonderful if you did more for us in South Africa. And he left it at that, but that very much irritated my father. Not that he had disrespect for the president, but it felt very much like the Edelsteins previously, that his contributions were clearly unrecognized because there was plenty he had done in South Africa and for South Africans. So he left that meeting with a renewed pledge. And when he got back to his office that day, the proposal that Joy Copland had now made together with people at the Board of Deputies, because Mendel had connected Joy with the Board of Deputies, and they'd gone to the Morris Isaacson School, and they'd asked the Morris Isaacson School, what could a philanthropist do for you? And they said, we haven't got a school hall, specifically where matrics can write their exams, which was a wonderful connection because the original money, as you heard earlier from Morris Isaacson, enabled the school to become a high school, meaning it could offer matric. So this was the next step, a logically step in that legacy. And he agreed immediately to build the school hall at Morris Isaacson Hall and wrote a letter to the president. Mr. President, I'd like you to know that on the occasion, and this might not be 100%, but I believe it to be the case, on the occasion of the 30th anniversary, it was 2006, of the uprisings in 1976. And because of your request this afternoon or this morning, we have decided, or I have decided, to put up the school hall, which he did immediately. That's number two. So that's El Salvador and Morris Isaacson. Number three is a Viennese opera singer, a gentleman who I don't have his permission to mention his name, but I will, because that seems to be a tradition here, Howard. Robert Brooks. Robert Brooks had heard of Mendel also through Joy Copland. And he was a wonderful man. He is a wonderful man who promotes formal music education to disadvantaged communities in South Africa. But he is a Viennese opera singer. His background is in opera singing, and he was trained in Vienna and spent time in South Africa. He has a background as well in South Africa. but he wanted to bring out some musicians through Tararam, with Tararam, the organization. I'm not sure it still exists. From Israel to South Africa, through Joy got connected to Mendel. Mendel agreed, let's bring out the musicians. In the end, the musicians didn't come, but Mendel had already paid for them. So Robert Brooks said, what must I do with your money? And Mendel said, something will come up. Let's keep talking, keep the money. A long story short, at some point, Robert Brooks said, Mendel, we need to do something with that money, and I'd love to put up a music center. And just at that time, my father, along with his partner, Isaac Jaffe, were building at Morris Isaacson School, and he asked, would the Morris Isaacson School be an appropriate place to put up the center? And they had meetings, etc., a lot, planning, logistics, all the issues with land. We're very familiar with that in terms of what it means to try and settle those issues. But it was agreed that we would put up a center with that money and more, which was called the Cape Gate Center for Music with Miyaji, CMCM, something like that, but it had the Cape Gate name and the Miyaji name because this was the first time ever that Mendel insisted on recognition because of that discussion with the president. And that's how a Morris Isaacson is connected to El Salvador and to a Viennese opera singer. And to this day, it's running, as you know, and you heard from Lungile earlier, what it's about. So it's part, I think, of what became a very clear idea in his head towards the end of his life, that it was important that the Jewish community of South Africa told their own story and reclaimed their own legacies. Part of his legacy was the South African Jewish Museum, or is the South African Jewish Museum in Cape Town, and it's part of the same thing to establish. And what I haven't been able to establish as fact yet for this presentation, but I believe that one of his conditions for funding the hall or the center was that the school's name should remain the Morris Isaacson School, so that the heritage of the connection between the community and Soweto would continue not only to survive, but with the center to thrive.
So, Oren, not only do we know about the Morris Isaacson School, but a year and a half ago, we brought Benjamin Zander, the conductor of the Boston Philharmonic, to South Africa. And we thought, it's no use him coming just out for the Jewish Achiever Awards. We want to make sure that he gives back to South Africa as part of his visit. So thanks to Wayne Sussman, who works for you, we took Benjamin Zander into Soweto, and we went to the Morris Isaacson Music School, and we got him to conduct, one of the most famous conductors in the world. We got him to conduct the orchestra at the Morris Isaacson Center. And I'm so happy that your mother was able to join us that day, and Joy Copland was able to join us that day. And the two of them sat in the audience as this world famous conductor conducted these kids that are learning music and able to thrive in that environment because of what you, your family, and your family business have done for the people of South Africa. So, Oren, thank you for joining us this evening. Thank you for telling that story. Thank you to all of our guests tonight. And we've decided to play out this evening, actually, with the video of Benjamin Zander in South Africa, which includes the clips of him conducting the orchestra at the Morris Isaacson School. I think the important thing, Peter and Dina, is that days like today are the foundation of what has created a free and democratic South Africa. Absolutely. And if there's anything that we can do, it is to speak to our children and our grandchildren and make sure that days like today never, ever get forgotten.
Absolutely. And something to be proud of, that we've moved on from a time like this, and that we have a democracy, and that we don't, that kind of oppression doesn't exist anymore.
Exactly. And I think it's important to recognize the people that helped us to get here as well. So, because as they say, they're the ones who lay the foundation for our current democracy. So amazing stories that we heard tonight.
Thank you.
So thank you all for watching, and we'll see you again on Sunday evening as we do our webinar on the great Jewish retailers who have built South Africa. And we play out with Benjamin Zander.
I'm talking to Benjamin Zander on People of Note. He's been visiting South Africa to receive an award, a Lifetime Achievement Award. And you like working with young people?
Oh, I just adore it. I adore it because they're open, they're excited, they'll give you their everything. They'll give you everything. I love coming back to South Africa. I come back, this is my 6th visit, and this is a visit in which I'm being acknowledged. But in the other visits, I felt like acknowledging South Africa as a place where there is enthusiasm and joy and energy.
I'm not trying to show you poverty or anything. You'll be meeting amazing community. Here we survive through arts and culture.
Being involved with young people and coaching and playing and conducting keeps your energy very high. I'll give you 3, 4, and you come in on 1. 3, 4. And music is a playful thing. We play the violin. We don't work the violin, we play it.
Ladies and gentlemen, Maestro Benjamin Zander, huge welcome.
Symphonia, the sounding of all the voices. I'm drawn to that tremendously strongly. Thousand people. The kids are very excited because they don't usually play for an audience like this. The orchestra is very good and they're very intelligent and they're prepared. And so I think it should be a great event. Beethoven and Schiller in the 9th Symphony expressed it so beautifully. Alle Menschen werden Brüder. All human beings will be as brothers. All human beings will be as brothers. A glorious opportunity. I said to Mandela, I said, you are the first leader of Symphonia, sounding together of all the voices. You listened for all the voices and you led the whole orchestra. The love in this community is spectacular, and it shows up in the shining eyes. I came happy about South Africa. I'm leaving ecstatic about South Africa.
The law of the country was that we're not allowed to take pictures of anything that the police have done. So I knew I was risking my life. The last picture that I took with this camera is for Hector Peterson, June 16, 1976.
We were so excited. It was like we were going on a school trip.
To them, it was just a joyful march.
The singing, the chanting, we felt free.
Surprisingly, the whole of Soweto came together to march. About 10,000 students.
All of a sudden, there was a shot.
All the police were just shooting at random.
What started as a peaceful protest degenerated into a rampage and later exploded into a bloody conflagration